So I really like this definition of core. And of course, the core is the middle. And as such, it is an easeful place which allows for balance and fluid thought, breath, and movement. It is where mindfulness is present, breath is symmetrical and driven by the diaphragm, movement is easeful and steady in all ranges of motion, and power can be generated and accessed without strain. So what it is not, what the core is not, and we fall into one of two categories generally as human beings, too much or too little. So the core is not rigid and it's not slumping. All right, and probably everyone can identify where you land on the side of too much effort or too much rigidity or too little effort and kind of a slumpiness. So where do you land? If we think anatomically about the core, if you could imagine a big cylinder, like a 50-gallon drum, you know, with a lid on both ends, or a top and a bottom. So the top is the respiratory diaphragm, and the bottom is our pelvic floor. And in between, you have the transverse abdominis, you have the multifidus. If you're working in static positions, that multifidus is super important as a spine stabilizer. And we might even have, if we're doing sort of more active postures, we might have the shoulder girdle and the pelvis involved as well. And if you think about the image of that drum, optimal movement and breath and easefulness happens when the top lid is stacked over the bottom lid. Okay, so if you can imagine, if you tend to arch the back excessively and the booty sticks out, your plumb line is out. Okay, your plumb line is out. And that makes things harder, not as easeful. And alternatively, if you slump around in the back and tilt the pelvis under, your plumb line is out. So we're going to today work a little bit with the middle, the transverse abdominis, the obliques, work in the pelvic floor a little bit. And I want you to just hold that awareness of, in what we call in yoga, the effort and the ease, the sthira and the shukam, right? We want effort and ease. And actually in the sutras, in the Yoga Sutras, sthira, which is steadiness, and sukham, which is joyfulness, those are to be balanced in all that we do. Okay, so we want to keep a balance of effort and ease. In our postures, in our asana, and in our lives. So at this point, if you're not already on your mat, you could go to your mat. And lying on your back, just go ahead and move in a way that feels inviting to you. Just take a few minutes of organic movement and really allow your breath to initiate the movement rather than your movement initiating the breath. So if we think about that cylinder again and the respiratory diaphragm being the top lid, the diaphragm is super important in our work with the core. So as you move, allow your breath to initiate the movement versus the other way around. And then from here, let's bend the knees and just rest your knees together. So feet on, soles of the feet on the floor, rest your knees together and let everything really just spread and relax. Let gravity do its good work here and just feel the support of the floor. And just let your breath move easily. So diaphragmatic breath, right? When we use the diaphragm for our intentional breathing, on the inhale, the belly will rise. And on the exhale, just feel a slight engagement in your core area. Won't get too specific yet, just a slight engagement in your core area. And then you can take your knees apart, so your feet are about hip distance apart. Take your hand, one hand, and just find your pubic bone, the front of your pubic bone, the bony part there. And you could rock over to one side and put your other hand on your tailbone, right? And find your tailbone. Here's the beauty of online practice. Nobody's looking, right? So those two spots, great. And then shift your hands and find right sit bone and left sit bone. I have to scooch a little bit and find them, yep. Okay, so imagine that diamond-shaped area, okay, contains the genitals, the anus, and all these muscles. That's the pelvic floor. So on your next few exhales, draw the pelvic floor up. On your inhale, you'll release. And on the exhale, draw the pelvic floor up. This is the bottom of this is the bottom lid of the cylinder. Yeah. Take it in the opposite direction. So on the inhale, can you draw the pelvic floor up? And on the exhale, let it go. And then let go of the intentional breathing or the intentional awareness on the pelvic floor and just take a few more rounds of breath. And then take your hands, take your legs long on the floor, like you're in Tadasana. And bring the heel of your hand to your hip pointers, the bony protrusion in the front of your hips, and your fingers towards your pubic bone. You make a little diamond or a little triangle with your hands. Find those hip pointers. And then you can bend your knees again. Place the soles of your feet on the floor. And on your next exhale, just feel for pulling the hip pointers towards one another, drawing them towards one another. So the musculature between your hip pointers contracts. Inhale, let the belly rise. And exhale, draw the hip pointers towards one another. A few more rounds, and even here, can you have an awareness of whether you're really efforting in this or you're allowing it to be easeful? Notice your own tendencies here as we strive for that balance. Next exhale, draw the pelvic floor up and the hip pointers together. With each exhale, you draw the pelvic floor up and the hip pointers together. Great. Now, take your legs long. Point your toes so that you feel some engagement in your legs. Draw muscle to bone. And then with your hands still on your hip pointers, just lift your right heel off the floor about 1 inch. Notice if that side of your hip, that hip pointer, sort of falls out to the right, to the side, and draw it in towards middle. Not moving your leg, but drawing your hip pointer towards middle. And then set your right foot down. Inhale, lift your left foot off the floor. Notice if the left hip pointer sort of falls out to the left, and draw it back towards middle. And let that foot come back down. Great. Now come back to the right side and imagine you're going to try to lift your right foot off the floor, but it is stuck to the floor. It's stuck to the floor. You can feel the engagement in your lower abdomen, in the transverse abdominis. As you do this, keep that engagement and then just lift the foot off the floor about 1 inch and see if that made a difference in whether your hip pointer kind of flared out to the right or not. And then set that leg back down. Go to the left side. Try to lift the leg off the floor, but it's stuck. It's stuck. Feel the engagement in your lower belly. And then lift the foot off the floor slightly. Feel the engagement in the lower belly. And then release. Just let your hands come to the side. Take a couple of relaxing breaths here. And then bring the soles of your feet to the floor. You could take your palms up or down here. And inhale, draw your pubic bone away from your navel, and then press into your feet and lift your hips. Exhale, roll down 1 vertebra at a time. Make sure you keep a little bit of arch underneath your neck, underneath your cervical spine. This is where you might want a little pillow below your head. When you come back down to the floor, take your low back into the floor, all the way into the floor. And then put a little arch in your back, in your low back. And then bring your low back back down to the floor. And now see if you can peel up one spine bone at a time, one vertebra at a time, all the way up, 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 up. And then lower one vertebra at a time, all the way back down. Breathe a little arch into your low back. And then exhale, press the low back down to the floor. And then peel up one vertebra at a time, starting in the lowest, the lumbar spine, all the way up through the cervical spine. And then all the way back down. And just do one more, just like that. And we'll meet in position of comfort. So with your knees bent and your feet on the floor, take your hands back to the heel of your hand back to the hip pointers, fingertips reaching towards the pubic bone. And then just press up a couple of inches off the floor. And then begin to march your feet. And notice if you can keep your pelvis relatively level as you do this, or if you flare out to one side as you march. So it's that same engagement that we did when we were lying on our back flat. And then roll down to the floor. Bring your knees in towards your chest. Just a little rocking back and forth. And then we'll come over onto our side. Stretch your bottom arm long and bend your elbow, and you can rest your head right on your elbow here. And then take a couple of breaths and find the side waist. So just find the side waist. As you inhale, the side waist sort of collapses or presses into the floor, relaxes into the floor. And on the exhale, you're just lifting up the side waist so that it comes, maybe there's just a hair of light between your waist and the floor. And after 3 or 4 rounds of breath, roll to your other side and do the same thing on the other side. And then we'll shift to our bellies and up to tabletop. Go ahead, take a few rounds of cat-cow. Feel for ease and movement. And then curl your toes under. Shift back towards your heels and lift your knees off the floor. Just about 2 inches off the floor. And then back to your knees. Shift forward, lift your heels off the floor. Your knees off the floor. So you shift forward towards your hands, cover your knees. Now shift back to your knees and shift your hips back and hover your hands. A little bit harder than it sounds. Come back to your hands, turn your toes under, shift towards your hands, hover your knees. Drop your knees to the floor, shift your hips back, cover your hands. Feel how you really need to engage between the hip pointers to do that. Back to your hands, shift forward, toes under, hover your knees. Drop your knees, shift your hips back, hover your hands. You can have your toes resting or lift your legs, that's your feet a little bit harder. One more time, come forward to your hands, turn your toes under, hover your knees. Drop to your knees, shift your hips back, hover your hands, hover your feet if you can. Great, and then come back to hands and knees. Take your right foot back, turn your toes under, press into your hands, press the floor away, lift the back, the right hamstring towards the ceiling, and then bend the left knee and lift the left knee off the ground and the foot if possible. Then left foot goes back to me, right foot, high plank, and then press back, downward facing dog. Inhale back to your knees. Reach your hands, reach your body forward towards your hands, hover your knees. Drop your knees, shift your hips back towards your heels, hover your hands. Come forward to your hands, shift your weight forward, turn your toes under, hover your knees. Draw the hip pointers together. Knees come to the floor, shift back, hover your hands. Come forward and back to neutral. Take the left foot long, turn your toes under, press into your hands. So press the floor away, lift the back hamstring, lift your right knee towards your chest. Great, and then take the right foot back, high plank, and shift your hips back, downward facing dog. Come forward to your knees and drop down onto your belly. Take a sort of modified crocodile here. So hands stacked on one another. You can rest your forehead on your hands. And notice here if you're clenching your glutes. Allow the glutes to relax. And slightly press your pubic bone into the floor. Inhale, press into your forearms and lift your head and shoulders, just slightly. And exhale, relax back down, or release back down. So do anywhere from 6 to 12 here, but keep a fluidity in your core. So notice if you're clenching your buttocks, and see if you can release, and just lightly press your pubic bone into the floor, and lightly engage the front of your core, so belly button up away from the floor as you press and lift. Exhale, release. So here going for this really good balance of effort and ease. Just do 2 more. And then let's bring the hands to the low ribs, press back up to table. And now interlace your fingers, releasing the pinky finger down. And we're gonna come into our forearms, knees on the floor, and we're gonna come into forearm plank. So leave yourself enough room on your mat to take both legs out and press into forearm plank. Press the floor away. Draw the hip pointers together. Lift your right leg. Set your right leg back down. Lift your left leg. Set your left leg back down. Drop to your knees for just a minute and reach your hips back. So contemplating what we're doing the same thing we did on our back, okay? But there's a little more effort involved here, needed, right? So we're gonna lift the right leg again and the left leg again. Think about drawing the hip pointers together. So come back into forearm plank. Feel the evenness in the steadiness in your pelvis. Draw the hip pointers towards one another. Lift the right leg just an inch off the floor. Set it back down. Lift the left leg. And set it back down. Stay here. Lift the right leg and bend your right knee towards your right tricep. And take it back. Lift the left leg. Bend your left knee towards your left tricep. Take it back. Stay. Press one hand into the floor, the other hand into the floor. Come up to high plank. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale, bring your hips back to the downward facing dog. And drop your knees to the floor. Bring your hips back towards your heels. Arms reach out in front, kind of a puppy pose here. And then inhale, you'll come up on your knees, arms reach up overhead. So we do this quite a bit in my classes, so I want you to really think about how do I stack the cylinder of my body and how do I do this movement with both enough effort and enough ease. So on your next exhale, you'll bring your hands behind your back, palms away, and you'll fold. Inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale, hands behind your back and fold. Do about 4 more, just like that. Stacking the hands at the sacrum, palms away, as you fold. We'll meet on our knees with the arms, inhale. This time as you fold, just tuck your right hand behind your back and reach your left arm long. Feel how that increasing the lever asks us to increase the effort in the core as we move up and down. Tuck both hands behind your back. Inhale, reach the right arm up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, come back. Exhale, both hands tuck at the low back. Inhale, left arm up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, sweep the left arm up, and exhale, both hands to your low back. Let's do one more on each side. Inhale the right arm up. Exhale to fold. Inhale. Exhale, both hands to your low back. Inhale the left arm up. Exhale, fold. Last one on your own. Release your hands, come into table. 2 rounds of cat-cow. Curl toes under, press back to downward facing dog. Come forward to the high plank. Bring your right hand forward slightly. Turn your toes to the right and stretch up into side plank. Feel the obliques working, side waist working as you press towards the hips, towards the ceiling. Coming back to the high plank, and then opposite side, bring that hand forward first, drop your heels to the left and press and reach up. Come back to center, to the high plank. Drop your knees to the floor, set your hips back towards your heels. Reach your arms away. And then sliding your hands back towards your knees, inhale yourself up to standing on your knees. Balancing here on your knees, take your weight into your left knee and reach your right foot forward. Inhale, reach the arms up. And exhale, side bend away from the right leg, the front leg, whatever that is for you. The front leg is bent and up. Side bend to the opposite side. Feel engagement in your obliques, the side of the cylinder. Inhale back to center. Exhale, side bend in the opposite direction towards the bent leg. Isometrically drawing your front foot towards your back knee. Engagement in your legs. Inhale back to center. Exhale, bring your hands down towards your front foot and slightly straighten the front leg. And then walk your hands forward, coming to either side of your front foot. Turn your back toes under, lift your back leg up and come up into crescent lunge. So draw the low ribs in, draw the navel in and lift the back hamstring towards the ceiling. Inhale, reach your fingertips towards the ceiling, and exhale, hands down around the front foot, step back, high plank. Bring your left hand forward slightly, turn your heels to the left, come back into the side plank. Back to high plank, take the other side. Back to center, to high plank. Press your hips back, downward facing dog. Inhale forward to the high plank, and then drop your knees. Reach your hips back towards your heels. Inhale, draw the navel in as you come up onto your knees. Take a breath here, centering, balancing, stacking everything. And then weight into the right knee as you bring the left knee forward. Proposal pose. Inhale, the arms up. Exhale, side bend away from the bent knee side. So for me, left foot is forward, side bending to the right. Inhale back to center and exhale, side bend to the left. The same direction as whatever leg you have forward. Inhale back to center. Exhale as you straighten the front leg slightly. Come into a bit of a fold. And then walking your hands, if they're not already there, sort of up, framing the front foot. Turn your back toes under, and inhale, press and lift up into crescent lunge. Lift the back hamstring towards the ceiling. Draw your front heel isometrically back towards so you're trying to scrunch up the mat. Really feel this gathering from the floor up. Draw low ribs in. Inhale, reach the fingertips towards the ceiling. And exhale, hands down around the front foot. Step back to the high plank. Lower your knees. Bend through the elbows, but keep some width as you lower, 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 lower down to your belly. And then bring your hands alongside your body. Lightly press your pubic bone into the floor and draw your navel away from the floor. Lift your shoulder tops. Lift your head. Feel engagement between the hip pointers. Squeeze the legs together and lift. Feel like you're going for length here rather than height. And then bending at your elbows, bring your hands underneath your low ribs, press up, and come to table. We could do a couple of cat-cows, just neutralizing the spine. So imagine that cylinder, that big cylinder we talked about. So even every position that we find ourselves in, every shape, think about stacking that evenly. Good, reach the left foot out this time, curl the toes under. Press the floor away with your hands. And now lift the leg, keeping the toes pointing down towards the floor and the hip pointers pulling towards one another. So your pelvis is nice and balanced, and then reach the right arm out. And go ahead and vinyasa this if you want, or hold it. Again, notice in your tendency for one preference over the other. Exhale brings the elbow and knee together. Inhale to reach out. Breath initiating the movement. And then bring the right hand down, the left foot down, left knee down. Take a couple of cat-cows. Stretch the right leg back, turn the toes under. Feel the balance between hip pointers. Lift your leg. Toes pointing down towards the floor. You could stay right here and just work with this, or reach the left hand long. You could stay right here and just work here, or you could vinyasa. But notice as you vinyasa, if you tip side to side, all right, if you're moving so quickly that you don't keep the awareness right in the cylinder, right in the middle here. Let's see if you can move slowly enough so that you're doing what you really think you're doing. And we'll meet at tabletop. 2 rounds of cat-cow. Bring the forearms together again, releasing the pinkies. Turn your toes under and come back into the forearm plank. Press through your heels. Press into your forearms, really lift, giving you a lift away from the floor. And then lift the right leg. Bend the right knee, bring it towards your right tricep. Back out. Lift the left leg. Bend your left knee, bring it towards your left tricep. And back out. And then walk your feet up towards your elbows in dolphin. Breathing here. You can hold dolphin, or you could rock forward, bringing your nose to your thumbs. See if you can move from the core. This is not just movement or work in the shoulders and the arms, but really engage the core. We'll all meet back in dolphin pose if you've done a few dolphin push-ups. And then drop your knees to the floor. Reach the arms up forward and long and reach your hips back towards your heels. Let your booty spread here. Let your hips be wide. And slide hands back towards the knees. Inhale, come up onto your knees, take your time. Find here a neutral pelvis. Not neutral pelvis, so not overly arched in the back and pelvis tilted forward, not overly sagged and pelvis tilting back. Find neutral pelvis. Then bring your right foot forward, stepping up into Tadasana. And here in Tadasana, same thing. See if you can stack. Actually, take your hands to your head. You could close your eyes for this or just come into Tadasana, but take your hands to your head and feel your head, the top, the sides, the back. And then can you stack the back of your head in line with the back of your pelvis? Release your arms down to the side. And in this Tadasana, can you draw the hip pointers slightly towards one another, pelvic floor slightly up, navel slightly in? Notice your tendency in something that seems very subtle and easy to work harder. Just find neutral. Find neutral. Back of the head in line with the back of the pelvis, the sacrum. Arms relaxed by your side. Legs slightly engaged. Kneecaps pulling up. Belly slightly engaged. Inhale, reach the arms up. And exhale as you fold through center. Keep that slight engagement in the belly to support your forward fold. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Draw the belly in, press into the feet. Lift the arches of your feet and come up. Urdhva Hastasana. Stack the back of your head over the sacrum. Line those two up, get your cylinder nice and stacked properly, and exhale, hands through heart center. We'll do a couple more, just half suns. Inhale, reach the arms up. As you exhale, slightly upstroke the navel. Draw hip pointers together to support your forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. And exhale, fold. Press into your feet, lift your arches, Inhale, sweep up. And exhale, hands rest at the heart center. Find that nice stacked position, position of ease. So we're structurally stacked. Our muscles are engaged, but we're stacked. Bones, skeletal system is stacked, giving us ease. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, as you bring your hands to heart center, draw the navel in slightly, hip pointers together to support your forward fold. Halfway lift. Exhale, fold. And then from here, you can separate your feet and drop your hips down to yogi squat. Hands in front of you in prayer, pressing arms into legs, legs back into arms. And then we'll come to sitting on our hips. Take the legs out in front with your hands behind the hamstrings. You'll need your block now, and we'll meet on the floor. Position of comfort. So the knees are bent, soles of the feet on the floor. Now you're going to take your block in your, let's take the block in the right hand. Bring the right arm behind you, block in your hand, take your left leg towards the ceiling. You can rest your head. I find it nice to rest my head in my left hand. So left leg is up towards the ceiling, head resting in on the left hand. Inhale here. Exhale, reach up and bring the block to the outside of your left leg. And inhale back down. So the head is being supported by the hand so that you're really not using the neck muscles to do this, but the core muscles. So inhale here, exhale, lift and twist, or bring the block to the outside of the left leg. Come back and repeat as many times as you want. Now, see if you can keep the hip pointers even. Pulling in towards one another. You could try the same thing with the leg long. I feel it quite a bit more supportive to have my knee bent, my right knee bent. And I would encourage you to go slow. And the next time you come down, just stay there. You could release the block just behind you. Bring both legs up to center, towards the ceiling. Both arms out to the side. Supta Dandasana. Just slightly upstroke the navel and bring hip pointers towards one another. And then searching for my block here. And then keep the right leg up where it is, bend the left leg. Block now comes to the left hand. There's your inhale, and on your exhale, right hand behind your head, supporting the head, supporting the neck. And on your exhale, block to the outside of your right leg. As you lift, you're lifting your head and shoulders, but head resting in your hand if possible. So you're really using the abdominals, obliques, and the deep transverse abdominis to lift. I would encourage you to go slowly. This is a lot harder, especially the eccentric, the letting go part. Could you slow that down into slow motion? Uh-huh. And really, you'll really feel that work. Next time you come back down, you can let the block out of your hands and bring both legs up. Supta Dandasana, pull your toes back towards your shins. Arms to the side, release, relax, let go. So part of the gift of yoga is learning and experiencing in our bodies when the effort needs to be cranked up and when we let go of the effort. Good. From here, you can take the back of your thighs and rock yourself the length of your spine until you can come up into some variation of Navasana, boat pose. So that could be with the knees bent, the legs straight, the arms out in front. Draw your low back in and bring the navel, upstroke the navel, right? Now here you could play with releasing down into Ardha Navasana and back up. You could be just holding whatever variation works for you. And now we feel a lot of connection to the hip flexors, a lot of work from the hip flexors. So we'll slowly, slowly, slowly lower this all back down. And if you have a block and it feels okay, place that block right underneath your sacrum. Bend one knee in towards your chest and reach the other leg long. So there's a slight engagement here in the navel so that we keep the low back from just completely collapsing into the floor. If this for any reason doesn't feel good in your low back, just remove the block, come to the floor, and do this without the block. We'll switch, bring the opposite knee in, stretch the other leg long. So just releasing the work in the front of the hip. And then I'm going to bring both knees into my chest here, towards my chest. Then soles of the feet to the floor, push up, release the block. Come back to a position of comfort. And then I'm going to bring my knees towards my chest again, nice and wide. Really feel for a spreading through your low back. A releasing in the pelvic floor, the hips, low back, everything's now just as really as relaxed as possible. And then take the soles of your feet to the floor and just bring your knees into that windshield wiper motion, moving back and forth slowly. So unwinding now, coming into towards the end of the practice. Can you make that shift into more of a surrender? Whatever you need, if you need a little bit more of a holding twist or a happy baby variation, Just take what you need, trust your body. And whenever you're ready, you could come into Shavasana on your back. Or I might also offer that you roll to your belly and take a Shavasana on your belly, making a little pillow with your hands, one on top of the other, resting your forehead on that pillow, and really feeling the breath in your belly. You feel sort of an opening or relaxing or an expansion through your back, through your hips. Traditionally, the feet are turned out here, so toes away from midline. But if that doesn't feel good to you, the tops of your feet could come to the floor. And just imagine, bring your awareness to the cylinder that we talked about at the beginning of class, the balancing of your cylinder, all four sides, top to bottom, side to side. And enjoy the surrender. Allow your breath to be easy. So in the Shavasana pose, we are alert, we are awake, but we are deeply relaxed. Can you soften even more? Softening through the hands, the muscles in your face, your neck. So our opportunity in the days of darkness as we move towards light now, towards more light, let's really embrace the time to pause and to find that balance. We live pretty full, busy lives, And this is really one of the keys to our well-being, is to find the balance, take the time to slow things down a little bit. Effort and ease. So stay if you like, and if you would rather come up to a seat, you can take your time to come up to a seat. I feel a deep gratitude to your presence, for your presence in my life and in this practice together. So thank you, thank you. And may the merit of our practice encourage all beings to unveil that hidden brilliance that lies within. Namaste.